Welcome to Sinful's Horror Stories. If you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe now for future content. If you would like to have your story featured on an upcoming video, email it to thesinfulsavant@gmail.com. I will leave a link to my email in the description box below as well. Please make sure to like this video as it recommends it to so many more people. Sit back, relax, stay sinful. This took place during winter break my freshman year of college, well over a decade ago. My friend and I decided to head to the rifle range we had frequented previously during high school. It had been about 10 months since we were last there, in the Northeast USA. The rifle range was outdoors, unmanned, and on the state game lands. You never knew who may be there. I've encountered strange, possibly sinister kids there in the past. Fair amount of normal people as well. We parked the truck and I immediately noticed skinned rabbits. Dozens of them. They were obscured at first because the grass, now dead in the winter, had grown so tall, falling over and cradling these neatly arranged rows of skinned small animals, possibly rabbits or raccoons. It disturbed me how hard to tell what something is once its skin has been removed. It disturbed me that someone would lay the new carcasses right next to the old ones. Each neat pile was in a different state of decay. Despite our better judgment, my friend and I decided to enter the rifle range. I grabbed my 2 rifles, like plastic guitar cases. This will come into play later. The rifle range is a large bunker cut into a taller hill. It extends 1,000 feet and the walls on the left are 40 to 80 feet tall. There's a question mark shaped path leading around the bunker to the gallery, where you stand or sit to shoot, not sure the proper terminology. Approaching the trail, I notice a dead deer off to the left of the trail, then another off to the right, then another further down in the center of the trail, all decomposing. A large hole in its abdomen filled with maggots. There's another that's all maggots aside from the bones. Never seen anything like that before. My friend and I carry on, me in front. Once we round the corner in the gallery area, there are 2 or 3 more dead deer. Like a deflated deer balloon on the gravel. Almost nothing left of them, 2-dimensional. This is when it really sets in how dilapidated the place has become. Everything is overgrown. Even looking downrange, the grass had nearly covered the whole area 2 to 3 feet tall, except for a trail in the center leading towards the back of the bunker. Along this path there is 1 dead deer every 50 feet or so off the side of the trail. The number of deer carcasses I've seen now is outrageous. Over 20. It felt beyond belief. About 500 downrange there's a pack of dogs, maybe 8 to 10, an almost ridiculous looking number, all circled around a deer eating it. I'm standing right at the front of this path. I turn back and my friend is pale-faced at this horrifying sight. Like a complete dumbass, I say, "What the hell?" Immediately 1 dog's ears perk up. It picks up its head and looks right at me, like it's in slow motion. It lets out a quick bark. The whole circle of them in a carousel lift their head one by one, locking their eyes on me. I glance back at my friend. He's already started running, 20 feet ahead of me. I look back downrange and see the dogs are already charging me. They already look twice as close. I start running as hard as I possibly can with those 2 guitar cases holding 2 rifles. I can't full sprint holding these things. I'm debating dropping them to run faster. I found the corner around the bunker entrance. Look back and see they're already in the gallery, skidding on the gravel to square the corner. 8 of the 10 of the most mangy looking hellhounds coming for me. I'm hoofing it as hard as I can. It's now a roughly straight shot to my friend's pickup truck. I glance quickly behind me and there's only singular feet behind me. I'm not going to outrun them. I think about dropping the cases. I glance again over my right shoulder and see something forever burned into my memory. A dog in mid-air leaping at me, fangs out, hopelessly close to me now. I'm still on full sprint, looking forward again, waiting to feel this thing's jaws sinking into a calf or a thigh. Total temporal distortion. Time slowed down. I thought of how I just saw a show on the History Channel. An old man, a World War II vet, had survived a mountain lion attack. He said that if a rabid dog attacks you, raise your forearm in front of their throat. They'll latch onto it and won't let go. I'm waiting for this to happen, getting knocked down. I envision one gets into my leg, rolling onto my back, throwing my arm up to catch one going for my throat. Then things torn to pieces by the other 7. I realize this could be how it ends. Astonished, being mauled to death. It felt like someone pushed me forward, giving me a burst of speed forward, then another, almost causing me to fall forward. Then I realized the dogs were smacking off the big guitar cases hanging at my sides, each time pushing me forward. This happened 5 to 6 times, and just then I was crossing in front of a truck. I throw the gun cases on the hood, open the door and hop inside. My friend is already in the driver's seat. The dogs are gone. I'm feeling like I just escaped a death from a horror movie. Expecting to hear some words of relief for my fate, my friend instead calls me an idiot for leaving the guns on the hood. I guess he wants to shoot at them. I tell him to screw himself. I'm not getting out of this truck. I almost died right in front of him. Eventually he gets out, gets a rifle from the case of the hood, loads it and climbs up the side of the bunker. He says they're gone. I quickly scamper up, confirm, then insist we leave. On the way home, I see a local cop at the gas station. It's inside his municipality. I'm telling him about the range and what just happened as briefly as possible, how it's a danger. He seems to get more aggravated the longer I talk, so I stop. There's an awkward silence and he coldly says, "Yeah, it's really bad out there." From his tone and body language, I can tell this exchange is over. He goes back to his conversation with the cashier. I just turn around and leave without saying anything else. I still wonder what the hell I walked into. What if I had dropped those gun cases? Why was someone dumping their legally skinned carcasses at a rifle range on state game land? And what killed all of those deer? The place was fairly well maintained for 2 to 3 years, and we'd been there inside the last year. Were those dogs? Wolves? Coyotes? Why was the cop so dismissive? Probably the easiest one to answer. The range is gone now. There's a natural gas oil well there. I don't really know where to post this. I've been sitting on this for a long time, so I figured I'd try it here. Thank you for reading if you made it. So for some context, my friends 16 and 16 years old, and I 16 from about 1 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. went on a night walk. The streets nearby are usually empty highways or weird roads. It's a small suburb inland. Around 3:30 a.m., we started to walk over to a nearby playground. On the way there, one of our friends who's interested in cars walks up to one to shine the torch on it, accidentally wakes someone up in there, and immediately apologizes. A few minutes go by, and we just start listening to music and talking for a good 45 minutes. Then it started to get cold, so we decided to head back. Our friend felt really bad for waking that guy up, and we all kind of had a gut feeling something would happen. As we walked past, nothing happened. No sounds, no lights, nothing. Then, just as we leave the park, we see who we assume is him, walking towards us. He seemed like he was under the influence of something, not sure what. We waved and said hi, told him to have a good night and all that, and he told us to stay on a certain side of the road for our safety. So we just did anyway. What's the harm, right? Something felt off though, so we had to look behind us, and the man kept walking for a few seconds, then stopped. He started to come back the way he came, slowly, and just sort of followed us in the dark. This was fucking terrifying. The only thing we really had on us, if we wanted to use them, were 3 glow-in-the-dark lightsabers that we brought along for a battle. We ended up taking a few shortcuts through the area, circled our way back home and inside. Even then, it still took us a while to process what had just happened. I'm a young woman and I run a business from home selling things online. If my extra products don't sell, I have a lot of yard sales, like mega yard sales, to try and salvage some cash, make room in my inventory. I have extended family who come from an hour away to also sell things with me, and it's just easier with help. I live in a good suburb, just a lot of old people. I like that I live within eyesight of an elementary school and a church, just good energy to have around. I had a big garage full of stuff, so I started carrying it to my yard super early, at 1 a.m. laying out blankets and bringing stuff outside in boxes. I'm listening to music on my headphones while I'm doing this. I get half of it out, so the back half of my yard is slowly pushing forward with boxes. There's very few cars out as it is very late at night, but I start to notice this white car multiple times. It happens about 3 times that I see them go up on the road, turn around at a U-turn, or go around the church parking lot, or into the elementary school lot, turn around, drive by my house on their way out. I pull out the back bed on our truck and sit, just watch them while they do it. I called my family, and they agreed to come at 5 a.m. instead of later, and I agreed to stay inside for them. They always slowed down slightly in front of my house. They did this for hours, each time showing up about 5 to 10 minutes apart. I took videos while I was inside of the car turning around and slowly going down in front of my house at 3 and 5 a.m. over and over again. I really wonder how long they were there before I noticed. I think they were waiting for me to get close to the front of my lawn to try and grab me. The kicker is the car stopped showing only when they saw my family was outside. I sometimes see the same car driving around a college campus close by the dorms late at night. About 2 years ago, my best friend's family brought me camping with them in the Adirondacks in upstate New York. Specifically Old Forge, which is a small, delicate town that almost gives off the feeling of something you'd see in the 80s movies. When we got to the campground, my friend and I walked throughout the campsite, saw many abandoned cabins, especially as we got deeper into the woods. These cabins were run down and engulfed into forest almost. When it got dark, we went back to our campsite, finally feeling uneasy about the campgrounds itself. Then we got ready for bed in his family's camper, but ended up sleeping in the car. We had fun for a while prank calling places and calling our friends. After all the fun, we were tired from our day, decided to try and get some rest. I was very uncomfortable and was unable to fall asleep, so I decided to just sit on my phone for a while. As the night went on, I kept getting more of an uneasy feeling. I saw the camper's light go on, and I thought it may have been a small animal or maybe the wind. It turns out it was a giant bear. Me, being used to the city, was startled, waking my best friend, which put him into a panic, and we slowly noticed that it was more than one bear, There were 3 rummaging through our garbage. Finally, a park ranger came over and scared them off, like it was nothing. Unable to fall asleep for the rest of the night, I noticed many people just wandering the campgrounds in the pitch black, with no flashlights or anything. This made me even more uneasy about our situation. Finally, I noticed people had stopped wandering through the campsite. It was about 20 minutes or so after, and I see something off in the distance. It looked like a man, but I wasn't sure. The thing or man, or whatever it was, just stood there staring at me until I saw it moving. I started to sweat and my heart began to race, so I turned on all the lights in the car, woke my friend up, turned them back off after. I told him what I'd seen, so we looked and the thing was closer. We both started to panic, so we called his parents who were in the camper sleeping. We never did figure out what it was. We left early that next day. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Please be sure to leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe for future content. Email your stories to the email in the description below. Till we meet again, stay sinful.
In 2014, I moved to England from Canada to gain work or travel experience, and also to find myself. I ended up living in Essex with 3 other roommates. They were all women, all a bit older than I was. I was 24 at the time. Megan was 31, Cherry was 34, and Cassie was 38. Megan was from New York, and Cherry was from New Jersey, and Cassie was from Poland. All 4 of us shared this 3-story flat. The back of our home was the living room and kitchen. The back wall was complete glass that looked out into the garden. The garden was completely fenced in, and the house had an interesting dynamic to say the least. Tons of stories from that time in my life, but I'll stick to this one. So, I adored all of my roommates, except for Cherry. After living with Cherry for 7 months, I was over her antics. One day, I came home from work. I locked the door, make myself something to eat, and go up to bed. I brought some work home with me, so I'm in my nightie with all these papers around me and my headphones on jamming out. I had headphones on because Cherry was out to dinner with work friends. That meant booze, and then soon after that a tantrum was surely to come. I just didn't want to have to listen to her crazy scream crying that night. I'm working away, completely focused, until I feel something. I look up to see a man standing over me. I don't register it right away and passively say, Cherry's room is on the 2nd floor, and continue to work. Cherry regularly brought strange men home, but he doesn't leave. Again, I say, Cherry's room is downstairs, He then interrupts. I'm not here for Cherry, he says. A cold chill iced my veins. My fight or flight kicked in just then, and I started surveying the situation. I look him up and down. He has a bottle of Prosecco in one hand and a knife in the other. He's about 5'10", wild muddy brown hair, and really black eyes. He has a light polo shirt on, and a side of his collar is popped up, a distinct Manchester accent. Once I focused in, I realized that his eyes were black because his pupils were completely dilated. I was in trouble. I needed an escape plan, but unfortunately, this man was standing in between me and my bedroom door. Obviously, I needed to get downstairs, but I needed for him to think that it was his idea. So, I decided to play along. Just then, he uses his knife to pop the cork. Presco is starting to flow out onto my carpet. I said, "Oh no, let's clean that up. I prefer to drink out of proper flute anyways." He nodded, replying, "Yeah, you're a proper classy bird, let's go." I try to act as natural as possible. I try not to show that I'm shaking all over and try to gain control over my breathing. We take the long journey down to the main floor of my flat, all 3 floors. He has the back of my nightie bunched up in one hand, and I could feel the point of the knife graze my back with his other. I was trying to playfully speak with him as he walked down the stairs. I couldn't tell you what I was saying. I was most likely just rambling, I think. I couldn't really hear anything, too, over my heart beating in my ears. We get to the bottom of the stairs, and there's a hallway to my left that leads to the front door. On my right, which is much closer to us, is the kitchen and the living room. We make our way into the kitchen. I point to the cabinets that we had the wine glasses in. He said that he knew where they were and started heading towards them. I now had the kitchen table in between us, and it was time to run. I burst into a sprint down the hallway towards the door. My hands fumbled over the locks, shaking and sweating. I swing open the door and see two men walking across the street. They must have been walking home from the train or something. There was a big train station in front of our home. I call out to them for help, and suddenly I'm flung onto the ground. Little pebbles pierce my skin, sending sharp pains where they jabbed. The intruder pushed me out of the way to run and escape. One of the men chased after the intruder, while the other said for me to go inside while he surveyed my home and called the police. I locked the doors and I called the cops. While I'm on the phone with dispatch, I manically run around the house to double-check all the windows and the doors are shut. Suddenly, I hear a loud bang on my door. I inform the dispatch of the banging, and she informs me that police weren't there yet. I thought it might be one of the gentlemen who helped me, so I go to look out the eye hole, and it's him, the intruder. He came back. He's banging on the door, screaming that I had his glasses and that he was not done with me. I absolutely freaked out, obviously. The dispatcher attempts to calm me down, but I'm losing my ever-loving mind over this. She then said, "They're pulling onto your street now. You should hear their sirens." And I did. Thank God. The intruder then blasts off. One officer jumps out of the passenger side while the car is still moving and chases after him. The second officer comes into my home and he interviews me over the course of some time, and the two gentlemen. Collects evidence, takes photos, all that stuff. After some time of him being there, Cherry comes home and freaks out. Once the situation was explained to her, she said, "Oh, that could have been me." "Yeah, thanks, Cherry. It's all about you, right?" The next morning, I'm called in to identify a man that they had in custody. I pointed him out. I go into a little room and the officer pulls out an evidence bag. He asked if the items were mine, and they were. There were my underwear and photos taken from my home. The officer then informed me that the intruder had apparently been stalking me for some time now. He estimates at least 3 months, and he had made a nest outside of our home on top of a hill that looked over into our living room and kitchen even. He's apparently a known offender and drug dealer. He then told me how lucky I was to get out practically unharmed, because apparently others weren't so lucky. So it was about 2000 or 2001. My best friend and I were 12 to 13 years old. We lived in a small town in rural Minnesota, about 2,000 people. Out of our friend group, her and I were the only two that lived out in the country, so we understood the boredom that could ensue, but the fun things that would come out of it. Exploring the woods, running around in the cornfields, creating forts, exploring the abandoned house on their property, etc. It was a really fun time for us. But one day, we decided to take our bikes and ride down some gravel roads. Her little brother tagged along. He was maybe, 9 or 10 at the time. We were riding along, laughing, probably picking on her brother, when we see an old shack in one of the cornfields. The corn wasn't fully grown yet, so we were able to see most of it. But we decided to explore it because, why not, right? I'm now 33, so bear with my memory. I don't remember much about the outside, but I do remember what I saw inside, and it still gives me the creeps to this day. We peered inside, and the first thing that I noticed were posters on the wall of the room. They were on every wall as well. There was a different person on every poster, and they looked angry. Some held guns pointed right at you, some were pointing their finger, and it felt like they were pointing right at us with their eyes trained on us. In the center of the floor was a perfectly painted red circle as well. My friend and I, we remember a star in the middle of it, but her little brother just remembers the circle. And as we were staring at this creepy scene, I feel like we're all of a sudden being watched, and not by the posters. I look to my right across the gravel road and into the cornfield across from us, and standing in the middle of the field, all of a sudden, is a man. He's just watching us. He's not waving his arms, not yelling at us, just watching. I quickly alert my friends and we look at him together. I awkwardly sort of wave and he continues to just stand there, no wave back. We are sufficiently creeped out, so we jump on our bikes to get away. We're on gravel, which isn't easy to bike on, so it's taking us a while to get going. We bike away and I repeatedly turn around to see if he's still there, and he is still watching us. In fact, he barely moved and only turned his body slightly to angle in our direction to keep watching. I still can't get over how he just appeared in the middle of a field like that too. I have no idea how we didn't see him in the first place. But recently, I've been thinking about this. So my friend, her brother and I started a group chat. We all shared what we remembered and they basically said everything that I did above. What I didn't know, though, was that they went back the next day, and apparently when they did, everything was gone, even the red paint on the floor. A week later, whoever owned it donated it to the fire department to be burnt. I don't know what was going on in that shack. Some thoughts have been like weird rituals, target practice for some militia dude, or just some weird creepy guy who had terrible taste. Whatever it was, it still weirds me out to this day, and the fact that everything disappeared only makes it that much more creepy, I guess. So, I wanted to share this because, well, I guess I would like some advice. You see, every single night for the past week or more, my boyfriend and I have noticed a car parked in the parking lot next door that faces our bedroom window. Usually, too, the person just sits in the vehicle for a few minutes and drives away. Though a couple of nights they sat there for about an hour. They don't appear to be on their phone as there's no light, but you can make out their face, and a couple of times my boyfriend has said that he thinks that he can see them looking at us. But we do keep the room pitch black, and we live in an apartment building, so it's pretty difficult for them to be looking through our windows. It's always around 3 a.m. though, and the car is never there at any other time. In fact, another vehicle is usually there, and we remember it because there was this weird incident where a man walked up to this vehicle with someone in the driver's seat and proceeded to spray paint all of the windows, then walked away just about a month or so ago. I don't know if the two things are related, but who knows, right? Does anyone have any idea as to why this person would be doing this? Why are they just sitting there looking in the apartments? And every night at the same time, too. I'm beginning to get a bit weirded out by this, and I'll keep you guys posted if anything else happens, but what do you guys think? So years back, I made a late night stop at a local Walmart on my way home from a friend's house. It was in a quiet area, not a lot of people out, and about at nearly 1 a.m. I've lived around there for years and never run into any truly criminal elements there, so I felt safe going to the store alone as a woman in my early 20s. I made eye contact with a teenage girl the second that I walked in the door. She was parked on a bench by the restrooms, hugging a backpack and a small purse, checking her phone with a rather desperate expression on her face. When she looked at me, I could tell that she was on the verge of panicking. After a brief second of staring at me, she went back to checking her phone and making phone calls. At the other end of the bench was a white-haired man in jeans and a t-shirt. If I had to guess, he was probably in his late 50s or early 60s. Altogether, nothing appeared off about him, but what struck me was the fact that he never looked up as I passed. Instead, his eyes were absolutely glued to the teenage girl next to him. Not in a passive way either, but like he was sizing her up for something. She was perched on the edge of the bench, angling herself away from his gaze and leaning away from him. Her body language screamed that she wanted nothing to do with him. And something about him really set off warning bells in my head as I went about grabbing the items that I'd stopped for. So, I'm normally the type of person that mills about stores aimlessly, making a point to wander each aisle just to see what's for sale. That night, however, I felt a pressing need to get in and out of that store as quickly as possible, and something in the back of my head told me to keep an eye on the man on the front bench. I moved my knife from my purse to the front pocket of my jeans, where it would be easily accessible. That's how uneasy I felt too, being in the same building as this guy. And as I purchased my items, I watched the pair on the front bench. The man had moved halfway across the space between them and was trying to chat with this young woman. She was shaking her head and offering one-word answers, looking like a rabbit about to bolt. As I walked past them again to leave with my purchases, she stopped me and asked if I was headed anywhere close to my old hometown. Apparently, she had been on her way home from a trip with friends or something, and they'd made a stop to grab some drinks and use the restroom. She had gotten separated from the group, and they left her at the store. The store was about a 30-minute drive from my old hometown, and I knew that to get home, she would have to walk several hours along unlit stretches of rural highway. The man sitting next to her continued to leer at her, but refused to look my way. While I would normally have told this girl that I was headed the opposite direction, something in the back of my head told me not to leave her alone with this guy. So I agreed to take her home, and she thanked me profusely and even offered some gas money and a cigarette. I refused both, and I took her home. The logic part of my brain reasoning that this girl weighed maybe 100 pounds and was a full head shorter than I was, so if it actually came down to it, I could probably fight her off. I wasn't stupid either. I texted a few friends to let them know what I was doing, and they were not happy with me. But the girl mentioned her address, and I knew exactly where she was talking about. It was an old, quiet neighborhood where I used to play Little League Baseball down the street and swim in the pool a few blocks away too. Now, during the drive, she had told me that she had just moved to the area with her mum and younger sister from a large city several hours south. She had taken off with a few of her old friends for the weekend, and her mum hadn't expected her back until the following day, so she'd silenced her phone for the night and hadn't picked up when the girls tried to call. Also, I vaguely remember something about her mum having to work early in the morning, and none of the girls' sisters were old enough to have their own phones. Anyway, we arrived at our destination, and the girl gave me a handshake and thanked me repeatedly, asking if there was anything that she could do to repay me. I told her, yeah, do me a favor. Why don't you get better friends? Looking back, though, I have no idea what about the man creeped me out so much, but something about him and the way he was staring at that girl just got my hackles up. I had thought in passing that he might have been waiting for somebody else in the store, or perhaps someone using the nearby restroom, but upon checking out, it struck me that I hadn't seen any other customers there, so he really had no reason to be waiting on that bench. I was still living with my parents at the time, so when I got home, I woke my mum up and told her what happened. She hesitated, and I could see that she did not like the idea of me giving a stranger a ride home, but in the end, she agreed that something had prompted me to take action, and that, who knows, I might have saved that young girl from being harassed or maybe a lot worse. So, this is the first time I've ever shared something like this on a place like this, though I've always enjoyed listening to stories here. But it started with listening to people saying their near misses with murderers and house invaders. Then it kind of shifted me to listening to more paranormal stuff. I'd always been kind of on the fence about such things. Like, on the one hand, I would be there going, how could something like that exist and people not have definitive proof of it? But on the other hand, I am not naive enough to think that there aren't some things out there that we don't know about. Besides, how could so many people have records of seeing that same thing when those people had never met? Still though, most of these stories are abroad, mostly America it seemed. Australia rarely seems to pop up in these tales, and outside of stories of yowies, there doesn't seem to be much help for me and what I saw. But anyway, here's what happened. So, I live in a small town inland of the coast of New South Wales. I say in a town, but the house is actually sort of situated a few kilometres out of town. It's the kind of area that you can see your neighbours in the distance, but you would really have to scream to get them to hear you. A few more kilometres up the road, and it turns into solid bush and national park. It's an old dirt road with trees either side, quiet apart from a few dirt bike riders who go there mostly on the weekends, and the occasional lost car, four-wheel drive, or person collecting wood. So for me, it was the perfect place to go and walk my dogs. On the day in question, I was out with my two dogs, a Great Dane and a Husky, and my mum's dog, a Scotty Terrier. My Husky likes to misbehave, so to stop her taking off into the bush at the smell of a kangaroo, she is on an extended leash. My Dane is loyal to the core, so he's off the leash, and so is the Scotty. She can be a pain and run off, but always seems to come back, so I don't really have a problem with her. So, this bush road, it has what are called fire roads. I believe, therefore, if you get caught in the bush in fires, so there are other escape paths, but I'm not 100% sure. These little beat-up paths, though, are like 20 times rougher than the already rough dirt road that I walk along. I was heading back towards home at this stage, when suddenly, all the dogs freeze up. For a moment I thought it must have been a roo or a wallaby or something, and instinctively grabbed my Husky's leash tighter. She always pulled my arm off when she saw or smelt a roo. But they all stood frozen, even my Husky. I could see the fur on my Dane's back on end as they stared ahead towards the fire trail that branched off. For a moment, I thought it must have been a person and they were on edge because they hadn't expected to see someone. But as I actually took the time to look to what the three of them were staring at, I finally saw it. There was a brown-coloured shadow in the thinner area of the trees before the dirt track about 15 metres away. Now, I've walked this road nearly daily, so I knew each log in this area like the back of my hand, and it wasn't something that I had seen before. This was confirmed too when this thing suddenly shot off and moved, and man, it was fast, like abnormally fast. The kind of speed that you would expect for someone on a motorbike, but there was no motor. In fact, despite my straining my ears, I heard no sound whatsoever. No cracking of sticks, no rustling of branches. It just took off into the thicker trees after standing there and watching me for like a good 10 seconds. I was sure that I had to be going mad, but as I looked to the dogs, all their heads were turned, staring in the same direction that this thing had vanished. It took me another good 30 seconds standing listening before I finally managed to move forward towards the spot that this thing had been. I had to pass it to get home, and so, as I walked past it, the dogs all began acting so weird. For instance, my normally brave Husky wouldn't go near the spot, kind of sniffing at it from a distance and then pulling ahead. The Dane did a full circle of the spot, going to the furthest point on the other side of the road to it, his tail tucked between his legs, and the Scotty followed him, cowering in his shadow. I had never seen them act like this before. Normally, if there was an animal or a scent, they would all barge each other to sniff at it, but they just wanted nothing to do with this one. If it was a person, my Dane would normally go into defense mode and stand guard, so I really don't know what this was. Walking in this area too, I know the sounds of roos, wallabies, birds, snakes, even feral deer made, but this thing, it moved like it didn't even touch the ground, not a sound. If the dogs had not been there and reacted to the same thing, I would have thought that I was insane or imagining it. Man, the silence of the bush after it made me feel so not right. And the whole walk back home too, I just felt like I was being watched. I kept looking back over my shoulder, but we would never see anything, and we never heard anything either. As I left the bushy area, I began to feel more at ease, and the dogs seemed to relax too. Honestly, I don't know what I saw that day. There isn't much on Aussie Paranormal except for yowies and spirits, but this figure, it was too big to be a person. It seemed wide and solid, more like a bear on hind legs kind of build, and it seemed really tall too. I would guess maybe 7 to 8 feet, but clearly there aren't any bears or animals like that in Australia, so what the heck did I see? What did my dog see? It freaked them out like I've never seen, and I haven't seen it on my walks again since then. Then again, I've also made sure to walk with others more often and sort of away from that spot. And while I felt uncomfortable and nervous, I don't know if I was in danger or if whatever it was just curious. I mean, it didn't attack me, though I felt like it followed me for a while. Either way, I certainly won't ever be going there without my dogs, that's for sure. And from now on, I'm going to see if I can take a different route.